All right, so I think we should start. Um, so hello for people who are here. If you could please turn on your cameras. Um, so we only have 4 people in here, um, which is strange but not very surprising considering I think people forgot that spring break is over. Um, so we'll see. Um, so how is everybody?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Did you do anything during the break?
Not really. No, it's a lot of
Is
sleep.
that? Oh, okay. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much the same though here. Just took it to relax and yeah, that was it. Has anyone done anything significant during spring break? Oh, okay. I mean, not that they that you'd have many options. Uh, anyhow, so I think yeah, we would just start with the 4 students in the group, um, which is not big of a deal. Right. Okay, so I'll share my slide. Okay, so today was not meant to be a long lecture, so you would have, I'll post a short video. So basically, we're just going to have like 40 minutes or less, maybe 35 minutes on today's lecture. And then we'll have an accompanying video. I find like students like that format in which they could do an activity on Panopto. So we're continuing talking about quantitative research, um, which, it's about quantity and measurement. So I'll first of all, uh, with some announcement. Um, so wait, so actually there's a mistake here. Okay, that's Bonnie's for Friday. So there is basically I have an announcement about the group assignment. So the assignment sheet is going to be uploaded today, and I'm going to talk about it on Wednesday. I'm going to record a video and post it by Wednesday. And I hope we had more people in today's lecture. But basically, there will be a sign-up sheet uploaded later today after we finish class, and you should consider which group of people or which students you would like to work with. Um, so if you really know, like, if you really know some classmates whom you like to work with, please send me your names and or like contact them. If you already have a group that you already decided to work with beforehand, just send me your names and CC everyone, and we can make that a group. But for the rest, we're going to have a sign up sheet. We're going to upload it to Blackboard, and then you would pick uh, whoever you would find comfortable working with. And if not, I'll just assign the reminder of people who don't have a specific preference to whatever leftover group. So the groups would be around like 4 to 5 students. Okay. And it's basically you're going to work on a research proposal. It's either you're going to propose doing a survey or an experiment. And yeah, and so you will work on that uh, for the remainder of the semester, and the due date would be the last Friday. we have in the semester, which I believe it's on May 19th. And so, yeah, so that's the quick, just to remind you that this is coming up this week. And hopefully by Wednesday, or at least even before Friday class, we could have all of the groups formed. And so you could start working starting like this weekend, and hopefully by next week you could pick it up. Any questions regarding this? Okay, and so now, like, going back to measurements and quantitative research. So before I talk about measurement, I think I need to refresh your memory about what we were talking about before we all went to spring break. So we're talking about quantitative research, right? So we wrapped up qualitative research, I talk about quantitative research, and we say quantitative research is linked to the idea of testing hypotheses. That is to say, you have two variables and or more, and you want to see if there's associations between them. So if there's an association with dissatisfaction with remote learning and learning performance or testing performance, or like is there a correlation between, let's say, income level and like ability to perform under stress, something like that, right? Or like aggressive behavior in playing video games. In order to do that, we said also quantitative research has to be consistent, precise, and accurate. That is to say, if you like, how do you measure satisfaction across the board? How do you measure aggressiveness across the board? How do you measure um, the amount of exposure to a TV show or a game, etc. So we say quantitative research aim to have some consistent and very precise in the way you define those things, those variables we talked about, and accurate. Let's say it provides measurements or assessments that are reflective of the concept it claims to study or claims to measure. Right? And since we said there's a problem we have in a field like communication, which is part of the social sciences, that not all variables can be directly or naturally observed. So because we don't, mostly in communication, we don't measure things like gravity or temperature or like electrical or electromagnetic waves. We measure things that are abstract. So things like satisfaction, enjoyment, performance, etc., which you cannot physically sense or find. And so that's why we say those things we have are like constructed or construct. They are just intellectual constructs. Someone came up with the idea that, okay, there's something we call, let's say, parasocial relationship, parasocial interaction. And that's referred to the relationship between the audience and the character of the TV. That thing was like just an abstract idea, and then it became a concept with a definition. And so whenever you encounter that word, there's a definition that hopefully all communication researchers and people studying communication would agree upon, at least in principle. But then that conception won't give you an idea of like how you measure it. So now I understand parasocial interaction. It's like the idea of forming a relationship, an emotional relationship with the character you see on TV or streaming device for that matter. But how do I measure the level? Hence, we said we come up with operational definition. Let's say, okay, so parasocial interaction is measured by these items, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And so we provided an example of like items for that. So you take things from just a theoretical definition, and then you say you provide items or criteria for measuring it. Those items or criteria or there would be questions basically, or measurement items. Uh, they are to be standardized. And that's in order to have consistency. Because if you're looking for associations, if we have something standardized, and to remind standardized mean, we say there's like an agreed upon scale. So standardized, you measure it from the scale of 1 to 100, or 1 to 5, or 1 to 7, or 1 to 10, or like binary, yes or no, or disagree, agree, neutral, right? So whenever someone's answered them, we could compare results across individuals and across studies. And that stands to refresh your memory again, in opposition to qualitative research, in which, like in a focus group, an interview, I ask you, let's say Jay, an open-ended questions, then Jay answers. But then if I ask Jason the same open-ended questions, give me a different answer in different words. And so their answers would be hardly comparable, right? Because I need to do content analysis in their answers and see, okay, what theme does the Jay talked about, or what theme the Jason talked about. But when I just ask them a simple question, tell me like how comfortable you were doing some brain break on a scale of 1 to 10. So if Jay gives me, okay, it was like 7, and Jason tells me 9, then okay, so Jason felt more comfortable doing sprint break than Jay, right? So easy, like standardized, that's what we mean, like have scale, which is cross individual, cross cases. And those scales ought to have accuracy and precision, by which we would make them exhaustive and coherent. And we're going to talk later about that. So that's a long introduction to say, to remind you, like those were the steps we've had: theory or problem identification, and then you provide a theoretical conceptualization of that notion or abstract problem you had. You then operationalize it, so you have measurable items, and then measurement is actually setting up the scales, setting up the numbers. So here you would end up with quantitative. And we use those methods in quantitative research, whether we're talking about quantitative content analysis, and we covered that already, right? So we have both qualitative, quantitative, but quantitative content analysis, and we're really just measuring the different percentages of things, right? And it's mostly like binary, so you have 1 to 0. So those were measurements. But similarly, in survey research and experiments, which are questionnaire-based methods, that is to say, people answer questions, we look at the results and compare the numbers. And so that's what we like. I'm sure you're familiar with the word questionnaire, right? So it's a list of questions. So a questionnaire is a list of questions. Each question is called an item, right? Or one question can have multiple items. So like, what's your age is an item, right? And then I ask, how do you feel about school? So you say excite. So in terms of excitement, that one item. In terms of enjoyment, that's second item. And then in terms of like how to say belongingness, that's the third item, right? So, and those 3 items constitute the variable that I called feeling about school or feeling about college, right? So each item could measure one big thing. So like age, gender, uh, origin, or like native city or town, or it could measure multiple aspects, right? So I can, satisfaction, I can measure it by 5 items, okay? So each variable could be measured by either like one item or a collection of items, by which each item would measure part of the construct we're trying to measure, right? So that collection of item is what we call a scale, right? So when you hear the phrase a scale to measure academic performance, or a scale to measure parasocial interaction, or a scale to measure aggressive thoughts, that would mean it's a list of items and with numbers to assess them, right? That's what it means. So it's quantifiable. So it will allow for consistency and reliability and replicability. Okay, so that's why we're going to talk about how then should I make it quantifiable? Okay? Like what numbers do I choose? What choices do I have in terms of quantifying those items? So that's the measurement part of the process. So that will lead us to talk about the types of scales or the type of collection of items in a questionnaire. That's what it means, right? And so scales could be divided into, and there are different ways to do it if you want to count the subdivisions or just the main divisions. But for me, I say they are mostly like they are basically 3 different types of scales. And the third one could be divided into 2, which we're going to show in a few slides, okay? So please try to pay attention during this. This is a very important slide. So the first one is nominal. What does the word nominal mean? Does anyone know? So forget about method. Just the word nominal in English. What does it mean? And someone. So Sarah, yeah, have you ever heard the word nominal before?
Yeah, I think it has 2 meanings. Like one, I'm pretty sure is like it's only in like name, right? Like only exists in name. And then the other one is like an economic thing.
Which is, okay, you took did you take an economics class?
Yeah. So it's like the value, it's like below the value, the real value or cost, or like
yeah, it's still your nominal growth or nominal value. That would mean nominal is meaning one is not adjusted for another thing.
Yeah.
Just the apparent. Okay, so it's the first one. They are related. So the first one, you say they exist in name only. And this is close to what we mean by it. So nominal in here are like categories that are ranked, but and assigns numerical, and I would say like numerical codes, but they don't carry a real numerical value. Okay? So in a survey, or like you call phone service and you would say press 1 for English or 2 for Spanish, or vice versa. That doesn't mean English is ranked above Spanish. That Spanish is equal to 2 English is. It's just a conventional thing, just for the sake of classification only. We say, okay, this will take 1, this will take 2, but it has no meaning whatsoever. Okay, and so picking gender, for example, in a survey, so 1 for male, 2 for female, 3 for others. those numbers don't have any real meaning. Okay, so that's the meaning of nominal. So these are like for when you're trying to measure variables that don't have like a ranking. So can you think of any other variable like gender with no ranking? So in demographics, we ask about gender and what else? Um, Jay, what else do people ask on a survey, on a typical survey, something like gender? What do people ask about?
Aside from just the gender, they can ask about age or what's their occupation, or if it's happening in a certain organization, they can ask what group you belong into just to make sure you're in a relevant field or more.
Yeah. So occupation would be.
Isn't it race
Yeah.
too?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Race, ethnicity, occupation. So when you say, for example, like 1 is Caucasian, 2 is African American, and 3 is like, I don't know, Asian American, that has nothing to do with the ranking or anything. Those are just arbitrary numbers. Okay, so it can be reversed, could be done on alphabetical order, it can be done on the size, it could be done on a random order. So yeah, so things like race, gender, occupation, like hometown, state, like you could have numbers, but state number 2 in a list and state number 22 in the list are equal. It's nothing related to them. So that we mean by nominal. Ordinal, on the other hand, is similar, but actually you have, guess what, order. That is to say, those are ranked choices. So the variable we're measuring has some differences between the categories it contains. So an example of that would be race, as in racing. Okay, so someone got the first place, someone got the second place, someone got the third place. So how you rank, for instance, of like academic performance in your class, or like on racing competition, or in, I don't know, like a ping pong or like a basketball. So those are ranked orders, right? College year is another example. So junior, sophomore, freshman, junior, sophomore, senior. Economic class. So in terms of like socioeconomic, I mean, so lower, like lower working class, middle class, and upper class. Stages of cancer, sorry, things like that. So this is ordinal, like, so you have some sort of an order. Continuous, and that's could be the confusing part. Continuous are like the levels are ranked and do have numerical values that are equally distant from one another. Okay, so here's the difference. Here's the example. So let's say we are in a race. So the 5 of us. So let's say I got the last I was the last one. Let's say I'll just do it on alphabetical order. Let's say Brown got the first place. Jay got the second place. Jason got the third place. Sarah got fourth place. Got fifth place. Okay. Does that mean that just by from those information, could you tell like how long each one of us took to finish the race, right? So in other words, it could be that Braun, and the difference between Braun and Jay was only like 2 seconds. Then from Jay to Sarah to Jason, it was like 5 seconds. And from Sarah to me, it was like 15 seconds. So our ranking in a race has nothing to do with like how distant we were from each other, right? The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but we don't know the distances. So that continuous variables, on the other hand, would tell you the distance, right? So grades, for example, basketball match scores, salaries, height, weight, like length, those type of things, right? Temperature. So the distance between 1 or 2 is 1. Distance between 2 and 4 is like 2 units. Difference between 4 and 8 is 4 other units, right? So the numbers have real values. That's the point. So when you say 1 or 10 or 5, so yeah, like 2 in this case is exactly between 1 and 3, 1 point here, 1 point there, 1 plus, 1 minus. And then 5 is half of 10, and 10 is half of 20, etc., etc. We call those continuous. So you see, like it's continue 1 unit to the other. That's what it means. So this is like a nominal example. So what's the mobile app that you use the most during the day? Uber, Google Maps, Snapchat, Instagram, Message, etc. But so those numbers, as you could see, has nothing to do with the value or popularity of each platform. Ordinal, if you would order chicken wings, what's the spiciness level that you prefer? Mild, medium, hot, extra hot, extremely hot. Okay, so those we would call ordinal. How concerned are you about catching COVID-19 virus in a scale of 1 to 5? Not worried at all for work. We would consider that continuous. All right. Why would we consider this one continuous? Could anyone? Yes. So here we have 0 to 5, and we're saying, okay, on a scale of 0 to 5, how worried are you or how concerned are you about catching COVID-19? So this is an example of a continuous variable. Why would we consider it continuous?
Is it because there's like equal distance between the numbers?
Yeah, right, exactly right. So here, if you so let's say you picked, so if you picked 3, it's equally between 5 and 0, right? Or like it's so if one of us picked 2 and the other one picked 4, you're twice concerned. So the second person is twice as concerned as the first person, right? Here, because we have assigned numbers. This one here, let me give you an example. So from mild, medium to hot. Do we know if the difference between mild and medium is equal to the difference between medium and hot? Right. So the spiciness level here is not, how to put it, it's not continuous in that sense. Medium could be just a small notch up from like mild, but then hot could be a big jump. Extra hot could be and just a little bit of added spiciness to hot, and extremely hot could then be something totally like rude. So we don't know like how they relate to one another, right? So they are ordered, but we don't have like continuous scale like a roller, right? So that's it, or like so that's the difference between continuous and ordinal. So ordinal and nominal, you don't have to memorize everything this side. ordinal or nominal, in some cases, you would hear them referred to as both categorical. Okay? So, and the others would be called numerical. So continuous scales are called numerical. And the idea is that, as we said, when we have numerical scales, as in continuous, we can actually do like divisions, we can measure distances, right? Because we say, okay, those numbers are all in a consistent and one continuous scale. Whereas categorical, yes, they could allow us to distinguish between different levels, right? So here are the sophomores, here are the juniors, here are the seniors, but we don't know what distance they have from one another, right? So that's what we call, which enable us to categorize, but then we would be limited in terms of the analysis of like how we measure like distances of association between them. So that will become much clearer once we go into the statistic part of the class. But you get, I hope you get the like the general idea of those things. Continuous scales could then be divided into two other, and this is mostly technical, though. So interval is the first kind, continuous scales. And those are basically things that were transformed to have standardized difference. The examples for that, and this is, by the way, the mostly used on in quantitative research. So depression level, motivation, intention. So those are things basically we took, and then we said, okay, imagine you have that scale. How would you place yourself in terms of like your, let's say, depression level or excitement level? Let's have a positive example. But do you have a numerical depression level that you could see, right? So depression doesn't come in number, it's just a feeling. And when you give that number, it's just an estimation. Like you place yourself between 1 and 5 or 1 to 7. But the point is, so because it's just standardized, there's no real zero. And I know it would sound weird, but there's no, you have a set of numbers that are discrete, but you don't have a real zero. But take motivation, for example. Like if you're motivated to, let's say, show up for class, but can you really say someone, how could you say someone that has zero motivation or zero inclination or zero depression, right? It's not like the zero you have is just arbitrary in a way, but then we put those discrete options just in order to make us numerically measure something. You see, so those are things that are by nature don't have a numerical value, and then we assign numerical values to them to measure intensity on a continuous numerical scale. Okay. Another example for that would be the Fahrenheit scale, and I'll tell you the difference, like why, in a second. The other part of like continuous scales is called the ratio. Came from like the ratio of something to something, the ratio. And those are continuous scales that have a true zero or the absolute absence of the measured variable. Okay, so if you have an absolute absence of something, you can then have a zero, and zero here would mean actually zero. So income, for example, could you have zero income? Hopefully not, but like potentially, yeah, someone could have zero income. Zero height or non-existence, that could also be theoretically speaking, right? Age, you're unborn, or conceived, depending on culture, and Kelvin scale. So do you know, does anyone know what a Kelvin scale is for temperature? Anyone heard of Kelvin scale? You remember science class, high school? Do you know what the lowest temperature we could get into? What happens at the lowest temperature point?
It freezes.
It freezes what?
It freezes the water.
Oh, wait. So at what point does the water freeze?
Oh, 0 Celsius, right?
3 Celsius, okay. I'm talking about the absolute zero, the lowest thing. What would get frozen at like absolute zero? You know that? Has nothing to do with communication, by the way, just like interesting, right? So Kelvin is actually, so the Kelvin scale for temperature that no one uses, by the way, so countries either use the Fahrenheit or the Celsius. The zero is like the lowest temperature that could ever be like set in the universe. That's like, and so you cannot get colder. And then you go from there. So the Kelvin scale doesn't have a minus. Um, so, but then you have 0 Celsius or 0 Fahrenheit. And those zeros were arbitrary, right? So someone picked the Celsius one. So they picked, okay, the point in which the water freezes, we would set zero at that. And then we go up or we go down. But that doesn't, that's just arbitrary. They could have picked another point, right? So that's why we have like Fahrenheit is different than Celsius. So for Fahrenheit, the freezing temperature for water is 21, right? Someone could have picked 11, someone could have picked 37, someone could have picked 15. Those don't mean anything. So it's an arbitrary point where you pick your zero or your baseline, and then you went up or down continuously. So the starting point, in other words, was arbitrary, but then the differences or like the distances were consistent, were continuous, were real. Okay, so that's the difference between interval and ratio. It's mostly like a technical difference. It affects little, especially at your level. It affects little in terms of like practice. So then that's why I answered. So 0 Fahrenheit is not a real zero. That's the point, because there is temperature below 0 Fahrenheit. You don't get like the absence of temperature when you hit 0 Fahrenheit. That's the key point. You could get colder. Okay. So yeah, this is another example of ratio. So within the last 2 months, how many hours have you spent online to attend and prepare for your class? So this, why would we consider that ratio? Amount of hours spent studying. Why would we consider this a ratio? Remember from this slide? So why is it ratio but not interval? Okay, let me simplify. Could you spend 0 hours studying? Okay, then it is ratio. It's something real, right? But if I ask you how motivated are you to study, and then from like 0 to 5, you could put 0 but you're still a little bit tiny motivated, you know? But you just think, yeah, it's closer to 0 than to 1 or to 2 or to 3. So yeah, 1 is a true 0. The other one is just like a conventional 0, right? So yeah. Here is another. Here this is going to be the last slide. Here's another like example. So which option best describe your Friday night plans? Stay in and study, stay in and chill, go out, go wild, beach party, a movie night. That's one question. And then how happy are you that tomorrow is Friday? It's a range from extremely happy from very happy. Which one is the continuous scale? The first one or the second one? You can answer with your hands or with the chat.
Is it the second one?
Yeah, it is the second one. Yeah, second one is continuous, right? So if there is an equal distance or between the variables, extremely and happy. The first one we call categorical, right? So they are different plans, but they're not necessarily ordered for that matter, or they don't have an equal distance between them, even if they were ordered. So yeah, we will. So yeah, we will. So here's another one. So the idea is then, just to conclude, like we have level of measurements to have in order to access actual variables in hypotheses we have. The women are more compassionate than men, right? How would you measure compassionate? So in a hypothesis, you would need to have a continuous variable to measure compassion, and then you could compare the levels, right? People living in New York communicate more aggressively than people live in Southern California. So you would measure like aggressive communication on a scale, on a numerical scale, and that will allow you to make comparison. Similarly, communication measures are more effective in communicating information than engineering measures. So yeah, those are variables that we would need to operationalize and then come up with a numerical scale in order to assess, and that will help us actually assess those hypotheses or test these hypotheses in a standardized form. So it's not only based on subjective perception, as we saw with interviews or ethnographic research, for example, but actually we'd have a scale in which we could measure across different questions, across contexts. So that's it for today. So I'm going to post a short video also about measurement in which you would have an exercise. So please do that. So I'll post it later today. Do you have questions? Okay, so that's the case. Then I'll see you later. Then take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.